Great news, gang. The Legends community is growing. I'm seeing more people talking about being new players on Reddit. I'm having more people pop into the stream and say, hey, I'm new, can you tell me about the game? So I wanted to go ahead and take some time to make a quick video about all of the basics. So if you're coming from Magic, if you're coming from Hearthstone, or if you're coming from any other card game, hopefully you'll find this as a tool to either generate interest in the game or maybe answer some questions that you may have had about the very, very basics. So again, this is a very high-level, quick overview about the core mechanics of the game. No deep, detailed tips or anything like that. You can always stop by and ask those kinds of questions, but for this, just real high-level basics, and hopefully it answers any questions you have about how this game might be different from other games you've played, and generate some interest. So here is the high-level overview, and enjoy. To go over the basics of Legends, we're going to go ahead and just dive right into a game versus the AI. As you can see, we're starting with 3 cards in hand, and each card gives us, art, some quick descriptions. As you can probably guess, these are keywords that are on them, and we'll go over all of the keywords a little bit later. And if you mouse over the cards, you can also see that descriptions pop up regarding what the keywords mean and what the cards do. You'll also notice that there is a cost up in the top left, and then we also have some values in the middle of the card. So this cost is representative of our cost in Magicka, which is the resource this game uses. And there's also an attack power and a health, and that's for creatures. We're going to go over the different card types here in a second as well. So starting each game, each player is presented with 3 cards that you can choose to mulligan from. In this instance, I'm going to go ahead and mulligan all of my cards, quick X's, and then we hit redraw. And then once you are given your hand, the game begins. So the AI opponent started by going first, and the AI played an action. So I can view his discard pile here, and we can see that he has played an action. So this game features 4 different card types. There are actions, creatures, support cards, and items. You'll also notice as you look at the board that there is a portrait here and a portrait here with 30 and 30. That represents the health of each player. There is also something that may immediately stand out, which is this nice blue line down the center of the board. So this blue line separates 2 different lanes. So the board is technically split into 4 different quadrants. On the upper quadrants here and here represents my opponent's side of the board, and then we have 2 lower quadrants here and here, which are my sides of the board. On this side, this is what's called the field lane. There are no special rules. If you've ever played Hearthstone, it functions very similar to that. You can play cards here, and I play my cards here, and these creatures interact with each other as normal. I can attack creatures, or I can attack my opponent as long as they're in this lane. Also similar to Hearthstone, the attacker chooses the priority or the target in this game. It's not, say, like Magic, where the defender gets to choose how blocks go. Another quick thing to note is that on each side, or each quadrant here, there is a limit of up to 4 creatures that can exist on the board there. If you try to play more than 4, then you will be prompted to choose a creature to sacrifice in order to make room for the new one. So now that we've talked about the field lane, which functions just like a normal lane in Hearthstone, there's also this lane, and as you can tell, there's a different icon. If we mouse over it, it says it's the shadow lane. Creatures entering this lane gain cover and cannot be attacked for 1 turn. My opponent had a creature enter here. You can see this little symbol over this, and that represents cover. So that will go away after 1 turn, and as long as that is there, I cannot attack that creature directly. If I had any actions, which allow me to potentially target creatures or creatures and or players, I could still target that. It only saves that creature from direct attacks. Other things you may notice about the game board immediately are this. I went second, so I start with what's called the Elixir of Magicka. This lets me activate it to gain 1 Magicka for that turn. It's very similar to the coin if you play Hearthstone, except I get to use this up to 3 times per game, as evident by this 3 here. So this is also one of the other types of cards in that it's a support card. A support card is something that enters the field here, down below, and they either provide passive long-term effects or they allow you to do things with charges, and you can use one charge per turn per support. So I'm going to go ahead and take my turn, and I'm going to use this elixir because, as you can see, I've got things that cost 2, and I only have 1 magicka, right? This says 1 magicka. Just like Hearthstone, this increments by 1 once per turn. Unlike Hearthstone, this has a cap of 12 naturally as opposed to 10. You can also ramp beyond that. So if you play something in this game that increases your maximum magicka by 1, when you hit to where you would hit your cap, you can actually go beyond the cap of 12. In fact, there are some cards that do things, for example, when you've hit 15 max magicka. So to go ahead and play something, I click on the elixir, and then I get to play a creature. In this instance, I'm going to go ahead and play this Mournhold Trader here.
Of course, I'm on
so
your
I
side.
pick the lane, he enters. This now turns green, as evident by, hey, I've done all the things I could do for my turn. If this doesn't turn green, typically that means there are other actions that you could take on your turn. It doesn't mean that you have to or should. It's just a nice visual indicator that you've done all that you can do. So then I pass the turn. The opponent draws a card. You can also see that their magic went up. He's choosing to attack me as opposed to attack my creature. And so now it's our turn. And we're going to go ahead and attack them and do 4 damage. And then we're going to go ahead and play another creature.
If I fall, they hiss.
Now, the last part of the board, as I'm passing my turn, that I want to talk about are these icons right here, because we're about to interact with them on our next turn. These represent runes. Each player starts with 5 runes, and you trigger a rune after you have done 5 damage to your opponent. So it's in increments of 5. When he hits 25, 20, 15, 10, and 5.
Didn't see this coming.
So we're going to go ahead and attack, and it's going to trigger a rune. I've done the damage. Now you may have noticed the rune went away, and a card was added to his hand. Now, what that means is that every time one of these runes breaks, you get to draw a card. Now, what's even more important is there are cards in this game with a keyword called Prophecy. So, for example, this card has Prophecy. And it says, you may play this for free when drawn from Rune Loss. So if my opponent had drawn a card that had the Prophecy keyword with this rune break, they would have actually been able to play that card for free. And it's important to know that that happens even during my turn. So if I was attacking with multiple creatures, he could have played a creature before this one attacked. So I attacked with this first. If he would have, say, had this here, he could have played it, and then I would have to attack into it because this one has guard. There's also actions that have prophecy and all sorts of things, and so as you can imagine, the rune breaks are very important and very strategic in this game. Not only are they a source of cards and act as another resource, but they can potentially swing tempo in your favor in pretty drastic ways. Now, the other thing to note is that once a rune has been broken, as of right now in the game, there is no way to get that rune back. Now, they may change that obviously with future card releases, but as of right now, once this rune is broken, even if he gains health to go beyond 25 again, he will not get this rune activation again. Also, if you were to go above 30 health, which you can do in this game, you will not trigger this rune until you come all the way back down to 25. Now, my opponent cracked my rune, and I do have a prophecy card coming up. As you can see, it's still his turn, but I get the choice to play this. So I will choose to play it here. I could drag it to my hand if I didn't want to play it, but who doesn't like a free creature, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to play that there. And so now we can also see that these are actions. My opponent has also played some other actions. These added creatures to the table. There's also actions that do, say, direct damage, like this, right? I could go to my opponent. I can go here because it just says deal 3 damage. If I could only target his creatures, then this would say deal 3 damage to a creature, but it doesn't, so we can kind of do whatever we want. So just for demonstration purposes, we'll do that. You can kind of see the cool animation. Something dies. You'll also note that even though my opponent played this as an action, the tokens that it created also go to the discard pile. So if you have things that interact with the discard pile later, unlike, say, Magic the Gathering, you can get tokens back out of your discard pile. So, again, a little bit different from maybe some other card games you've played. You'll also potentially note if you're coming, say, from Hearthstone, there is no presence of hero power, so there's nothing to help you saturate your magicka if you're just playing out of cards. That basically concludes all of the basics about the board and the four different card types and the attacking mechanics and things like that. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to a little bit about deck building and how the different card types work and some of the keywords and things like that. So one of the things to note about this game is that your cards are divided up between 5 key attributes. This game has strength, intelligence, willpower, agility, and endurance. There's also some cards that are dual attribute, and then there are also some that are neutral or attribute agnostic. Now, this game is also prone to having people refer to these by colors. So if you hear somebody say like yellow-green deck, they're really saying willpower and agility, for example. When you combine two colors, the game also refers to color combinations by classes in this game. So for example, if I were to start a new deck and I were to say pick this card and I come over here and I pick Calm, this naturally tries to say this is a Crusader deck. So Crusader is the game's shorthand way of saying that I'm playing strength and willpower. And each 2 attribute combination has a shorthand notation like that. Now, when you are building a deck, you can choose cards from up to 2 attributes. 2 attributes are not required, though you're not at any advantage for playing a mono attribute or a mono color, so typically 2 attributes is in your best interest. Each attribute combination naturally means different synergies working together, so each of the attributes does 1 or 2 things really well, and if you're trying to combine those things, then you're usually trying to accomplish a specific goal. So for example, strength and willpower is often really good at being aggressive, but then intelligence and willpower is really good at playing a control style deck. So willpower has the flexibility to be both aggressive and control oriented depending on the cards and what it's paired with, right? And each of the attributes has that kind of flexibility. As of right now, the meta for this game is very diverse and very healthy, in my opinion. So that's wonderful news. Now, if you're coming from a game like Hearthstone, this can feel more complex, but can also be kind of a breath of fresh air. So you're not just locked into a class like Mage or Shaman, but you can actually, pick the card style or play style based on the attributes that you like, and kind of mix and match with some different combinations, and get some really cool outcomes in terms of deck build, right? Now, neutral cards are typically a little more vanilla because they can go in any deck. So if you have what's called a scout deck, right, based on agility and endurance, you can also include any neutral card. For constructed play, decks have to be between 50 and 70 cards. I strongly recommend 50 because it's just more efficient. You're more likely to draw the cards that you are looking for if your deck size is smaller. As of right now, there's not really a tactic or a strategy for getting somebody to draw out of their deck. You can win a game that way, but because the deck size is that much larger, it's very, very infrequent that games go that long. When you are building a deck, you can put up to 3 copies of any one card in a deck. So if I open up this deck, for example, you'll notice that some cards have this 3 here, and this means I'm running 3 copies of this. You can also run 2 copies of some cards, 1 copy, etc. You don't have to run 3, just like Hearthstone or Magic, you can play with your numbers. Some cards, however, can limit the number that you play. So, for example, Ungolem, the listener, is unique. And you can tell that by, if we locate Ungolem here, you can tell that by this red or orangish jewel that appears here. So when I hover over, you can see it's kind of red or orange, it's top center, and that means he's unique. So even if I own multiple copies, I can only include 1. That's typical of any of the cards that have a specific name and are referencing an Elder Scrolls character that is like unique in the lore. As you can imagine, the unique cards also tend to be much higher in power. Now, unlike a game like Hearthstone, however, you can still have legendaries like Blood Dragon. So, speaking about the rarity, right, there are commons, rares, epics, and legendaries. But Blood Dragon is a legendary that is not unique. So if I wanted to, right now I'm only running one copy, but I could run 3 if I wanted to or owned them. Tazcad, however, is also a legendary, but again, he's unique, so I can only run 1. So this is a little bit of a different approach than, say, Hearthstone, where all legends are automatically unique and you can run 1 of. So for a quick demonstration of the rarities, you can see that there's a jewel down here below, and the white or gray jewel is common, blue is rare, purple is epic, and then Ungalim's going to say max allowed here, but if I mouse over, you can see that he's got this like bright orangish yellow kind of glowing diamond at the bottom, and that means legendary. And those are the 4 rarities in the game. This game features a crafting material very similar to Hearthstone. The crafting material in this game is called soul gems. If we turn on the crafting here, and we click on this, we can go through and maybe locate some cards that I do not own. So, for example, we've got Murkwater Shaman. You can see that I've got a 0 here, so I own 0, and it's grayed out. If I click on this, it's going to tell me that I need 400 soul gems to craft this because it's an epic. If I owned one, I could soul trap it for 100. So for the costs in this game, if I go ahead and I look at common, it's 50 soul gems to craft a common, and you get 5 back for soul trapping. Rares are 100, and you get 20 back for soul trapping. And if we go and look at legendaries, legendaries take you 1200 soul gems, and you get 400 for soul trapping. One of the reasons that it's a little bit less in this game than, say, Hearthstone to craft legendaries is because, again, you have a larger deck size, and in some cases you can run more than one copy of a legendary. So I believe that's why they have lowered the cost. So another thing that I want to look at while we're in here is keywords. So you'll notice that this one has guard, and if I mouse over it, it tells me what guard does. The game currently has 7 keywords that are affecting a creature once the creature is in play. There is guard, which functions very similar to taunt in Hearthstone. If this is in a lane, other creatures in that lane have to attack this. There is drain, and drain means that whenever this does damage, on my turn, I would gain health from that creature doing that. There's also regenerate. So if I start typing regenerate, we can see that we've got some items that grant regenerate or creatures that have it. And this means that at the start of my turn, this creature would heal back to full health. There's also breakthrough. So breakthrough, if you are used to playing Magic, functions just like trample. Any excess damage that this creature would do to another creature instead goes through and also does that much to the opponent. There's also lethal, and lethal destroys any creature that this damages. One thing to note in this game is that it doesn't have to be through combat damage. So if you have an effect that would make, say, this creature damage another creature, whether that's via an item or an action, then it would automatically destroy those creatures as well. Another keyword is ward. So ward would prevent all damage that a creature would take the first time it takes damage, and then there are some effects that will reapply ward. So if you're, again, used to playing Hearthstone, this is very similar to Divine Shield. And the last of the keywords that we're going to go ahead and take a look at is charge. And charge is, again, very similar to the charge in Hearthstone, if you're used to that, or haste in Magic, and that creature can attack the turn that it's played. Now there are some additional shorthand text that is used in the game, but they don't necessarily count as keywords. So, for example, prophecy is technically a keyword, but it doesn't count as a keyword once the creature has entered play, and that's important because there are some cards in this game, like Mundus Stone, that will grant a random keyword when you play a creature. So Mundus Stone would not grant prophecy in that instance. There's also something like summon, right? So when you see the word summon, it means there's a bonus effect that occurs when that creature is played. In this instance, summon deals 1 damage. But summon doesn't count as a keyword because, again, it's not affecting the creature when it's already in play. It's something that triggers once when it enters play. There is also another shorthand piece of text called Last Gasp. And Last Gasp is very similar to Death Rattle if you play Hearthstone, and that means that this creature does something when it's destroyed. Again, this doesn't technically count as a keyword because it's not affecting the creature when it's in play, but only when it's leaving. It's a singular trigger at that point. So if you have something that copies keywords or steals keywords or erases keywords, it would not affect Last Gasp. It would not affect Summon. It would not technically affect Prophecy. And it also won't affect our last one, which is Pilfer. So Pilfer does affect the creatures when they are in play, but not at all times, right? It's not a static ability. Pilfer occurs whenever this creature deals damage to the opponent. So this one, for example, would draw you a card when it deals damage to the opponent. But because it's only doing it at that point, it's not technically a keyword, and because the Pilfer effect is also unique for each creature in the game, you again wouldn't be able to copy it because it's not a static effect keyword. So Mundus Stone, for example, will not grant you a Pilfer effect, and if you have creatures that steal a keyword, say like Anasi, who is a legendary creature, she would not steal another creature's Pilfer effect. The last thing I want to show off while I'm in here is the difference between normal cards and premium cards. Premium cards are sometimes called golds, they're sometimes called foils, but essentially it's just the shiny version of a card. So here we have the Khajiit Highwayman here, and this is just the normal version. And you may notice that I have next to it this one that's got like this shining gold border. This is a premium one. Now, I know that this example looks pretty lackluster, but the game is still technically in beta, and they're going through and they're doing art passes periodically, pretty much with every patch they put out. And some of the creatures in here, or actions or spells, actually have some really impressive premium art, and some of them have this very generic, like, sheen. So this is an example of kind of a lackluster one. In fact, you might not even realize this was a premium when you opened it in a pack. But don't despair if premiums are your thing. There are some really interesting ones. So like Haunting Spirit, this is kind of a dull, drab card, but once you go to the premium one, the effect starts to really make it light up. This is one of the ones that got a recent art pass. There's also fun stuff like Crystal Tower Crafter, for example, who really has the effect kind of light up. Things with lightning effects or fire effects also tend to really stand out. So if I turn on the crafting for the premium cards, and I go ahead and I take a look at this, you'll see that now the fire looks actually pretty animated and, you know, entertaining and impressive. Similarly, if we go ahead and we look up Lightning Bolt, for example, Lightning Bolt actually has like a ripple and looks like it's striking. There are other cards, it will help if I know how to spell, like Supreme Atromancer, where again, the fire effects tend to have pretty cool flickering and so forth. So every time that they do a patch, like I said, they've been improving the art on various cards, adding better effects, giving some passes to some of the premium cards. So again, this one's kind of lackluster, but then you get ones like Lesser Ward that's kind of got like an action here. So again, if premium cards are your thing, I wouldn't fret. They're getting better and better. The game is still in beta, and I hold out hope that they're going to end up being pretty impressive when all is said and done. So the last quick thing I want to go over is your profile screen and some of the kind of abstract ideas or concepts that belong to this game that may belong to other games. So the first thing that stands out is quests. Quests are how you earn gold, which is the in-game currency. It's going to sound very familiar if you are used to Hearthstone. And for the most part, it is very similar in terms of the kinds of quests you can get. There's win 3 versus battle games, win 3 games with a specific class. In this case, this color or this attribute combination means Spell Sword, which is like a class in the game. You'll also get some quests that are play creatures into the Shadow Lane, or play creatures with Breakthrough, or things like that. You can also see what your current rank is. So right now I'm currently in the Legend rank, and if I click on this, I can see what my end of season rewards are. So for this game, rather than giving you chests of existing cards or premium cards like Hearthstone, every month they give out a brand new card. So this Mechanical Ally, for example, if I click on it, this is a card that has not even been released. When the month ends, I will get 3 copies of this because I'm at the Legend rank. And again, this will kind of enter the meta or be released and kind of change things up. So every month we get a brand new card. Some of the cards in the previous months have actually drastically altered the meta. In fact, the last 3 are all played very heavily right now. Withered Hand Cultist is a very good anti-control card. Smuggler's Hall is a very good combo card in an action-oriented deck that people play right now. And Histgrove is a very popular ramp and late game card that is kind of defining one of the 3 points on the triangle of our current meta. So while I am skeptical about Mechanical Ally having the same kind of impact, it is really encouraging that we are getting new cards at the end of each month and that they are not just kind of throwaway cards, but for the most part they've been pretty impactful in how they affect the game. That's going to make for a very diverse and changing meta, which I think is good. I think it's healthy. While we're on the subject of rewards, I also want to mention that this game does feature rewards for winning 3 versus games, very similar to Hearthstone. Instead of getting a set value, though, you get somewhere between 15 and 50 gold. The amount is random. You also can get a card, and that can vary anywhere between common to legendary, and there's also a chance that you could just outright get a pack. So the rewards are pretty generous just for playing the game. There's also rewards for practicing versus the AI. So whenever you practice versus the AI, you earn soul gems, which are the crafting component. Now you can earn up to a maximum of 300 soul gems from practicing against the AI per day, but that's, again, 300 soul gems that you basically get for just playing the game. And considering that legendaries cost 1,200, that equates to essentially either a legendary every 4 days, or it could also be 3 epics every 4 days. So filling out your decks, as long as you're willing to put in the grind, is actually pretty easy to do, even as a free-to-play player. Other quick neat things in here are your arena rank. So this game features a what they call solo arena and a versus arena. Versus means player versus player. You've got like a rank. Your rank doesn't actually impact your matchmaking or anything. It's more like a badge of honor, but you do get promotion rewards when you rank up. So again, they are just kind of throwing rewards at your face, which is kind of fantastic. The solo arena is you still playing the arena format, but you're playing against AI, and it can be very good for new players if they're not very good necessarily in the versus arena, or they're just trying to learn the game and they don't want to play against other players that are veterans or more versatile. You can kind of get your feet wet in the solo experience. You still get bonus rewards for ranking up. The rewards aren't quite as generous as versus arena, but they're still definitely worth the entrance fee. And they kind of throw in some like specialty experiences, right? So sometimes you might start at a disadvantage, like your opponent might start with a creature. Sometimes you start with an advantage. They kind of like mini throw in a storyline, which is kind of cool for like a PvE experience there. And then lastly, as like a cheeky, tracking type thing, you can set a title in this game. So titles are earned from basically completing like achievements. So if you do a thing, you earn a title. And some are pretty easy and basic, and some of them are pretty ridiculous. But for the most part, this is just kind of a like show off the things you've done, and it will show up here on your profile, and then in game, if somebody mouses over your name, it will also say what your title is there as well. So if you're into achievements, then good news, there's a decent amount of them in this game, and your reward is in the form of a title. So that concludes our basic overview of the game and the mechanics and the card types and anything that you may have wanted to know about the game if you're very, very new to it, or if you're thinking about getting into it. I know that many players are probably coming from Hearthstone, and some of you are probably coming from Magic, which is why I made so many Hearthstone and Magic related references. If you haven't played either of those, that's fine too. I think the game is very easy to pick up, and if you have any questions at all, you can always swing by the stream and ask me. I love answering questions. You can leave a comment on this video as well. I'd be happy to answer it there. Hopefully this piques your interest and you'll give it a try. I'm really enjoying it thus far, and I don't see myself falling out of love with it anytime soon, so I hope you have a similar experience. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.